Good afternoon, everybody. It's really a delight to practice together. And oh, do the edges come forward, the edges of our practice. And you know, that's exactly what we're here for. If we want to just kind of avoid and skip over, the world is vast and wide, and there are far better ways to avoid yourself. And so when we come into session, I've had occasion to say to a few folks, we are voluntarily getting ourselves climbing up on the slide and letting ourselves be put under that microscope, and the lens comes down, and let's see. And there can be an overwhelming, simultaneously an urge for that, seeing into ourselves, being seen into, and also, oh God, no, not this. And that can show up all kinds of ways. Typically, blatant resistance is not so much. I mean, you don't need to be here. You can just split. I think in daily life there are many situations that we find ourselves somehow or other, it feels to us we're trapped and we have no way out. And so that can look differently. Sometimes the aggression can be clear, sometimes it's hidden, sometimes we just repress it. But one of the most common ways, interestingly, at session to avoid this interrogation of the self, which really you're the only one who can do, let's be frank, is for us to actually be, to try to disappear behind the Raksu, to try to be perfect, right? To get it right. And that's another kind of hiding mechanism, depending. That one's a little slippery because you do want to get it right, and it does matter. So it can be very difficult for practitioners, and myself when I was studying with my teacher, to be able to tell the difference. Where's the difference between earnest and sincere right effort and knowing or unknowing hiding by trying to be right? Because it can feel like it's the same, maybe even look the same, maybe. I mean, there's lots of koanic examples that you could make a case for pointing this out. I'm not sure that they do, but you could think so, and it might be useful. Open the blinds, right? Two monks get up, open the blinds or close them, whatever the case is, and they sit down. And from the high seat comes the grand insight. One has it, one does not. How helpful. And mind you, in this koan, I forget which case, it's in the gate somewhere, I think, there's no obvious difference. I mean, students confronting this koan will say, well, one must have done it right and one did it wrong. Oh, no, it's not that simple. It's not that. That is not. The master goes to interrogate two hermits. Knocks on the hermit's door. Anybody in? Anybody in? And the hermit inside holds up a fist. And he says, oh, so shallow, nowhere to dock a ship. Something like that. He goes to the neighboring hermit. Anybody in? Anybody in? Oh, the Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, rainbows and glitter. Whoa, streamers. Perhaps a disco light. Well done, well done. And when a student confronts that, well, again, the point I'm trying to draw out for the purpose of our conversation today is some guidance that all of us really need to take in. If you're really going to do this, and I know you all are really trying to do this, that's really clear, we have to be willing to interrogate even the subtlest aspect of motivation. Where is this coming from? We should know how this comes to us, right? We must not uncritically accept anything. And people, when they hear the Buddha's teaching about that, they think, oh, some point about the Eightfold Path, does it really matter? And well, we live with wrong concentration, notice it sucks, and then we go, yeah, that's right. So we click into right concentration. That's a level of it, sure. There's deeper levels, though. You see, what's required in the path is complete and total authenticity, which means owning all of it, all of ourselves. And man, right? I mean, I know in my own training when I was working with my teacher, especially my first teacher in my first 15 years or so of practice, I mean, I was very acclimated to being appreciated in the environments that I was in at that time because I could think things through. That was a virtue, a value, and it was in a way currency, to show that I could think through the permutations of things. I've spoken about this before. So strangely, this capacity that I had always experienced as an asset just failed me miserably. It was horrible. It was horrible. I would go in there with my shtick. No. Out. What the hell? I was doing it right. But you see, I was still doing the dance. Look at me, or don't look at me, look at that. Or look at what I did, look how good this is, notice it, not me, thank you, or whatever. But in my case, my prowess at discerning permutations and their permutations and those permutations, I suppose I would have been a good chess player if I ever tried, I don't know. But really all I was demonstrating was the map of suffering of my own mind, living in a maze of imaginal permutations and their consequence, and expecting everyone else to live in that same fantasy with me, and being outraged that they didn't, without even knowing that's what I was doing. No wonder the world is full of sharp edges and prickly people and horrible situations, viewed from that particular prison lens and projecting it onto everyone else, all of it wrong and fantasy and not true. How could the world be anything other than a horrid disappointment? Well, the answer must be more permutations. Let me see, I'll get to work on this. I can even remember going into Roshi with some brilliant yet really stupid insight about comparing and contrasting Dogen Zenji and Thomas Aquinas. Can you believe it? And I was so certain that this was going to get a gold star and a pat on the head and a there you go. No, that didn't happen. And thank goodness. You see, back on campus, that kind of thing would be excellent subject material for a paper that would end up getting a really good grade and would end up saying, hey, maybe you should consider going further into this. You know, there are further degrees one could attain. And you understand? That just happens to be my particular misfortune. You have yours. We all do. My teachers, too. The difference is that the journey of awakening requires us to really master ourselves and be free. To be free of those conditioned ways of experiencing ourselves in the universe. Why? So that we can actually live an authentic life without the dance. I mean, when the music plays and you want to dance, it's fine. But when you can't stop dancing and you don't even know that you're doing it, you know what I'm talking about? It's like the bad man's nemesis there, the Joker, has this horrible weapon of laughing gas that makes you laugh so hard you die. It's something like that. We will literally kill our life sacrificing it on the altar of our coping mechanism. It's a bad trade. It's a very bad trade. One that will fail you inevitably. Because even if we manage to eke our lives into a more pleasant version, it's not our true life. Because it's based on this dance, or this mask, or this whatever. Right? And so you do actually somewhere, if you get still enough, you know this is not it. But what to do about it? Because you see, the world will reward you for this. You can wind a hell of a career around it. And I'm actually not going to say that that's wrong. I mean, it's a way of being in the world that is skillful and has value in spots and at times, but not as a way of totality. The reality of our life is so much more mysterious. Refuses to have a little bow tied around it and be put into a box, as it should. And so we come, whether we know it or not, we come into session and we get up, we climb on that slide, a little glass plate, you know, and here we are, just slid in, and the light comes, and the optics turn on, and just relax. Settle down enough that you can actually see. You can be awake and you can be clear and you can see how you move through this space. And it's incredibly, it's just unavoidable. The smallest little thing, the tiniest little pebble dropped into this pristinely clear pool will make a ripple from point of impact, and it will affect every single bit of water in that pond. Even the tiny little pebble. Whoop. Right? And the ripples come back and it dissipates after a while. But still. And so this is why it's absolutely critical that we settle and be still and let our bodies, at least, and our minds, hopefully, calm down and attain not a sleep of stillness, not not like a corpse laying there not moving. It's not going to work. I mean, you actually just being still, me actually just being still. Let the marionette strings go for a minute and just be. See? You know, Daido Roshi, my first teacher, he used to say that even the frog knows how to be still. What's with you? And he made the big Italian hands. You know. I can still feel them. Oh, well, I can't do this. I have a family. Squirrels have families too. No excuse. That squirrel's doing a better job being a true, authentic squirrel than you are being you. Ring, ring, ring. And I didn't know what the hell he was talking about, but I knew he was right. And I knew he was right. How to find that true human life. And it doesn't mean that everything's pressed neatly and all the moves are exactly right and all the appropriate, it's not about that stuff. It can look that way, it doesn't have to look that way. But there's an intent, there's a clarity. Sensei and I were discussing, Doan Sensei and I were discussing, I've lately been, I don't know if I remembered this saying from somewhere or if I came upon it on my own, but this image seems to really have been useful for many of us this weekend and elsewhere. And that is that this stick, right? If I take this stick and I take it into the earth and I make a line, it will gouge into the earth and it'll leave a scar that will stay there for some time. That's the stick. That's the line. There's a scrape. And sometimes when we move or do a thing, we're gouging. We're gouging ourselves. We're gouging the other person. We're sure as hell gouging that situation. Right? You know, for me, one of my points of tension is when I'm late. That's a good one for me. Oh, God, I hate being late. So then I got married. And I've been late for everything ever since. And it's been great practice, honey. But when I'm in that compression, I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but when I'm under that time compression, especially if I gave my word that I will be somewhere, so guess what? I don't just put on the shoe. I put on a fucking shoe. You know what I'm saying? I don't just close the door like, it's so, well, in that case, it's not subtle. It's incredibly aggressive. What's happening? I'm putting on my shoe. I'm getting in the car and closing the door. But that's not all that's happening, is it? I'm gouging myself. Because after all, I have to put on my shoe. And you have to close the door. But, there's layers more going on than just putting on the shoe and closing the door, right? Or at least it can be. There's James Joycean levels of story going on there. Maze upon maze upon maze of confusion, and this aggression just ladled throughout the whole thing and put on the shoe. It's a gouge. And the thing is, that when we gouge ourselves like that, it can become entrenched. It can go from being a simple scrape in the dirt to being a trench, like as in trench warfare trench, a deeply rehearsed and prized gouging of ourselves. That is the line of battle. Usually those we know. We take pride in those. We think that's being right. Because after all, you have to put the shoe on. Common sense. But there's another one where a little less than that, a little more subtle than that, you take the stick and you drag it in the pool. And it makes a wake, and then it ripples. So the disturbance in the water, it's there, but then it kind of heals fairly quick, but that ripple stuff still goes for a while, but it does cool down. So that's better. It's better. It's better to drag your stick through the water than it is to drag it through the earth. And so for a person that's stuck in that gouging, to get from earth to water is big progress, actually, to be celebrated. Because the water will cool down again. And so a lot of us come into sesshin and we're working with water. It's water bending. Splash. And we have to be still enough to realize it's okay, actually. Those gouges aren't permanent either. Things settle down, like I was saying. And then again, you do something and it ripples out, right? But the best one is air bending, right? And that's where you take your stick and drag it in the air. And there's no trace. There's no gouging. It's traceless. That's when the shoe just goes on the foot and the door closes. And you see, there's no trace of your good self or your bad self or your vengeful, angry self or your shameful self or none of that stuff. It's just a shoe on the foot and the door closes. Those who are charged with training others in the liturgy here, their job is to give you feedback. I have some feedback. Your job is to just receive it. Just receive it. It's just a stick, man. It's just a stick. The bell's a little more this than that. The lights should be here rather than there. That's all. But right? But it's not necessarily so. And particularly if you've been in an environment where you have to overtly prove your correctness to avoid catastrophe as a result, and you really exaggerate the thing. See? It's good, see? All of this is extra, and it's not helping. Really. When a priest comes and gives you a little this, not that, it's just a stick, man. It's just like that. It's not coming from a place of aggression. Shouldn't be. And it's the same when I'm needing to give some guidance in the Doksan room. It's if I were to be coming from this gouging kind of place, you would feel that. And you would not be coming back, and you shouldn't. Right? I think perhaps it's a great tragedy that some folks might find themselves in something like that kind of role, the guiding role, the helping role, and end up being very, very trench digging about it. It's not good. And what's tricky about it is it's just putting on the shoe. It's true. It's the way in which it's being communicated that's not right. See? So it should be, and my teachers were like this, I would need some guidance and go in front of Myo and Roshi. And the koans have this incredible way of bringing up exactly what you need, exactly when you don't want it, or when you do. And I'm off. I'm not seeing it. And Myoen Roshi has this incredibly skillful way of, with a twinkle in the eye, yeah, that's not it, is it? And there's no trace. It's just communication. And it's communication I needed and I'm grateful to have. Hard to come by that level of the gift of that. That's what we say. You go to a Zen teacher and show them your mind. And then the response comes. And it should be, and it is, a traceless response. That's one of the qualities that has to be in place as people start moving into that role. It has to be utterly and absolutely and uncontestably clear that that potential teacher can do this with no trace, because otherwise it'll hurt them badly, and students worse. Even if they're right. We need a line, not a circle. Is it gouging? Is it wake making? Is it traceless? And you can tell the difference. You know what I'm talking about. Because you know how it feels. And if you don't, you need to. And it starts with being able to feel it yourself. Am I gouging myself with this thing I need to do? Am I creating unnecessary ripples with this thing I need? Or am I just doing this thing I need to do? That make sense? So you can, believe it or not, you can be sitting there looking like a Buddha in the Zendo, which is quite something, and the stay, which is amazing, looking for all the world like you're crushing it, and yet what's going on is World War V, right? And there's all kinds of seppuku happening, you know? And the only way around this is stillness. We have to learn to really give ourselves to the stillness and let the stillness give itself to us to such a point that there's no gap between the stillness and ourselves. We are the stillness. It's not even like I'm being still. That's not even close enough either. It starts like I need to be still, and then I am kind of still. But that's not the same thing as being stillness, realizing stillness. But for as challenging as that is, that's the easy part. You see, it's when you need to give a correction or receive a correction, or when you engage in something that's, takes some figuring or what have you. But when I'm late, there's where the practice really needs to be. And you can't think your way through that. You can't make a mental map and say, that's what I'm going to do, and pin it to your forehead and expect that to work. It doesn't work like that. You have to experience it deeply. You have to experience it so much that it more and more becomes your known default setting of traceless presence. So that it's possible, not just when the horizon is beautiful and the situation is just so and everything is lovely, but particularly when usually it's those we love disappoint us bitterly. People we let in to our inner circle, they're the ones who can really gouges, right? I thought to draw a bit from cultivating the empty field today. The sixth ancestor thoroughly illuminating. When the Buddha ancestors first appeared, there were no monks or lay people, but everybody had their own truth and position. So simple, so clear. When they intimately experienced and genuinely attained it, was called entering the Buddha mind school. And Master Dogen centuries later would pick that up. It's just Buddha Dharma, just Buddha mind, entering the mind of awakening. That's it. Old Lu, the sixth ancestor of Huineng, who realized the Dharma's source, was a person who sold firewood. A person of very low status, illiterate, no credential. As soon as he arrived at Huangmei, the fifth ancestor's temple, he said, "I want to be a Buddha." In the rice hauling room, the ancestor Huineng worked pounding rice until his mind mirror transcended worldly impurity, and he was thoroughly self-illuminated. So this pounding rice, you need to understand a little bit about that. You see, at the time, the fifth ancestor's monastery was ascendant and powerful. It was populated by the firstborn of many of the noble families and aristocrats of the day. Literacy rate, the entitlement was there. And this illiterate southerner kind of reminds me of the stories of Louis Armstrong when he took the train up to Chicago that first time to play with King Oliver's band, and he's just looking like an old country, old world misfit, shoes are too big and the wrong kind, and farmer overalls, and some stupid bow tie that doesn't fit and he doesn't know. And he opens the doors of the train in Chicago, and then there's this one of the most happening cities on the planet at that time, the Model Ts furiously racing around. Of course it's putt. But at the time it was racing, The city buildings he'd never seen, New Orleans, nothing's that tall, the ground won't allow for it. Looking all the world like, who is this Yahoo? He's going to be fleeced of his money in no time if he even has any, and that will be that. But of course, as soon as Louis picked up the horn, that was a different story. Huineng is like that. Literate kid from the South who had no right to be there. So this line here that says, "I want to be Buddha," what you're not hearing in this story is that the fifth ancestor, the fifth descendant from Bodhidharma, did an investigation of this illiterate southerner who insisted to see the abbot. All right, let him come. Fine, I'll talk to him. And in that exchange, it became clear. Beyond the incorrect mannerisms and the funny attire and the accent that bespeaks the lack of education and culture, there was a traceless quality that communicates. And so the abbot said, "Oh, I'll have pity on the kid, give him a job in the rice hut." And then he went to the rice hut and said, "Come here, kid." And he started training him. Interestingly, we have several ceremonies in the Sangha that happen on or around midnight, and they're all initiation and empowerment and acknowledgement kind of ceremonies. There's not many, but there's a few, and they're significant. And that sort of dead of the night, red room, secrecy thing, it hails exactly from this transmission from the fifth ancestor to Huineng, the sixth ancestor. Because you see, the abbot at the time, it would have caused a riot for him to transmit to this illiterate peasant kid. He's got like number 1, 2, and 3 monks who are scholars and, in fairness, would go on to be teachers in their own right in time, but at this moment they were not ready. And the boy was. So after some time pounding rice, go pound rice. That means training, right? In the rice hulling room, the ancestor Huining worked pounding rice until his mind mirror transcended worldly impurity and he was thoroughly self-illuminated. This traceless quality still had a few glitches. A little bit of work needed to be done to clarify things. And that's how it is even for someone of Huining's affinity, let alone me, who was trapped in mud and the permutations thereof. He was bequeathed the ancestral robe at midnight and crossed the Dayu Mountains. That's quite a story, you know. He received the robe and the bowl in like some kind of weird story. Run. He's like, what? Like, run. Take the robe, take the bowl, and it probably at that time was Bodhidharma's bowl and maybe some chunk of cloth that he had. It was actually probably maybe Bodhidharma's literal robe. Like there's one. There's one teacher at a time, and it goes from one to the next. Like, dude, take this, go that way, fast. I'll hold them off. Interesting and important point. He told the ancestor then, that now the sixth ancestor, look, you have it, but you're not ready to teach yet. I want you to go live in solitary. Go be a hermit for, I think it was 16 years, if I'm right. And after 16 years or some mystical number of years, then come down from the mountain and start to work with people, but not till then. You need to refine what you've seen. You have what you need. Run. Kind of cool. So he did. With faith in the robe, he set it down, and Venerable Ming, with his mighty strength, could not lift it. And then knew that each person must intimately experience and authentically realize it for themselves. Now, Ming is a hell of a character. Very interesting, very interesting. He was one of the monks, prominent, who was also as the tale goes, he was a general. He was a soldier, right? Like a big, strong man, weapons expert kind of guy, special forces type, one of those. And of course, when dawn broke and the robe was gone, how would they know? Well, the teacher didn't have it anymore. He gave it. Where's your kesa? Oh, I transmitted it. What? Who the hell did what? Yeah. Oh, no one. Never mind, let's just go. No, where's the robe, right? And a bunch of very well-intended folks said, this was a horrible mistake. I got you. I got this. We're going to go get them. And they ran after the sixth ancestor. And the most vigorous of them was Ming. Like some Terminator chasing. And I want to stick up for Ming, damn it. He's sincere. In that moment, his motivation is correct. Ill-informed, certainly not right, but it's not wrong either. He's trying to save the Dharma in his mind. He really thinks he knows better than his teacher at that moment. He's arguing with the teacher, and he's saying why the teacher is wrong, and this changes everything, and this isn't how it's supposed to be, and no, this isn't right, and I'm going to fix this, and off he goes. Bless his heart. And so the other monks eventually give up and peel away, but not the special forces guy. Oh no, he's going to get after it. And so he's chasing, think about this, a massive veteran, coming after this little kid. Ah. He's not a kid, but he's not one of those people. And so Ming, in his all ill-informed but sincere maneuver, he's gouging the entire way. He's chasing that ancestor. And what is he gouging? Himself. He's got to get the robe to save the Dharma. Who could argue with that? Right? Eventually, at least in the telling of it, the tale, he catches up to the ancestor, and the ancestor says, "Yo, it's good, bro." And he sets the robe down and the bowl on a rock, and he backs off. Hey, if you want the robe, take it, man. Kind of interesting. That's a lesson, too. Huineng could easily have said, "Hey, you have no right. The master gave it to me, it's mine, and I need that to be able to do what I need to do. You want to save the Dharma? Let me have this robe. That's how this works." He didn't do that. Yeah, take it. Set it down. Now, what's not written, and I don't know how you'd write it, probably why it's not written, there's a felt communication that goes on. And I think old Ming's husky run did him some good. I think he got some time in the woods, and he got to physically work out some sweat and some reality there. So by the time he caught up to the ancestor, you can imagine what a froth he was probably in. You know how we are when we get fixed on something. We just, you know that feeling, probably, maybe, in spots. Particularly when it's a good thing. And we can really scar ourselves with it, justifiably. But old Ming, he finally catches up, and he sees the robe sitting there, and as the telling goes, he went to pick it up, and he found that he couldn't lift it. Now, I don't read that as some mystical mystery tale, like some divine intervention. The robe was literally too heavy to lift for this massive soldier. I think he realized, I'm being a dumbass. Because there's this communication between them that Ming had to settle down enough to be able to perceive that the sixth ancestor had and was radiating this tracelessness. How is it that Huineng set the robe down? Fine, take it, fuck this. He would have lost the robe, and he should have. Put on the damn shoe, close the door. Right? Not even awake in the pond. I'm quite sure that the ancestor locked eyes with this green beret coming at him, and he knew who he was. He said, "Here, take it." And there was a traceless thing that was purely demonstrated there. What's the content of your enlightenment? Here, take it. And the purity of that expression was like a shock wave that hit Ming and shook him out of his stupor, his obsession, his fanaticism, his drive, whatever, his tantrum. And we have to be particularly careful of the tantrums that are fueled by being right. Those are really the dangerous ones. Or we think we're right. And so in that pure presentation of the whole, the sixth ancestor completely demonstrated the totality of the Buddha Dharma, tracelessly. And Ming realized it's not about the cloth. Unfortunately for Ming, he said, I'm being a dumbass. Please, what did you receive? And please teach me. And he actually had an awakening experience right there as Huineng's. And he asked to become Huineng's student. And Huineng skillfully adhered to his teacher's guidance and said, let us both bow to our teacher, the fifth ancestor, together. And they made bows in the direction of the lineage. You know, again, there's an opportunity if Huai Ning was like, I helped this guy come to awakening. You're my student now, yes. Ooh, that should feel creepy. But again, the ancestor didn't throw the robe down and take it. He didn't say, yeah, I'm amazing, check my teaching this out. No, again, traceless. Let's both call the fifth ancestor our teacher and bow together. You see it? The story in these words are pointing to something that is not centuries ago. This is happening like now in you and in me and in all of us. So I ask you to be very patient if you feel some gouging coming your way from yourself. And I ask you to be very patient with yourself if you feel some wakes and ripples coming at you from yourself. And I ask you to not make a thing of it if you actually manage to be traceless for a minute. Don't cling to that either, like the ancestor didn't cling to the robe. And especially if you feel some gouging coming to you from someone else. It's just practice. It's Ming's chasing you, man. What are you going to do? Fine, I'll do this thing. What did the ancestor do? Just meet the moment. Probably a good move. I think Ming could have taken his head off pretty easy. Take the robe, bro. Just be patient with the whole process. All of us are in this process together, right? We come here knowingly as a Sangha to be put into the tumbler together. And that's what's happening. Don't be surprised by that. That's what we signed up for. It'd be like being upset that there's like rows of Zafus when you get here. What? That's what we do. Venerable Ming, with his mighty strength, could not lift it, and then knew each person must intimately experience and authentically realize the truth of themselves for themselves. So nowadays, please do not acquiesce to sages and exalt their worth instead of realizing yourself. That's a radical thing for a Chinese person of that day to say, because lineage is everything. It's like, so please don't hide behind piously bowing to the ancestors instead of realizing. You really want to bow to the ancestors? Realize yourself. That's the real bow. That's the real bow. And live that traceless life where you are free. You are free to completely meet every moment exactly as it comes, not bound by the stressors of urgency and the need of being correct or wrong. After all, a line needs to be drawn. Don't just accept that. It's not good enough. Right? Traceless. Leave no trace. And this requires us to settle. And not just when it's easy. I mean, that's really job enough, I know. But this settling, if you can really cultivate it, and you need to. If you can really find that still point and trust it, then when the pressures come and the challenges come and the feedback comes your way, it's okay. It's okay. It's more than okay. It's a miracle. Some miracles are more welcome than others. I don't like seeing the pug poo where it's not supposed to be. But kind of I do. Because they're alive still. And so am I. And right now, we all are. So if we really want to thank the ancestors, as I want to thank my teachers, there's only one way to do it. You have to draw the line sometimes, but do it tracelessly, and don't hold on to it. And when you see and feel yourself gouging, try to at least move it up to water and let it settle as soon as you can. And once that becomes normal, get into air bending. Really, it's sweet. It's so wonderful. There's no resistance. It's just a line in the hand, that's all. For the sake of all beings throughout space and time, may we all properly thank the ancestors. May it be so.